3.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another edition of The Fight Guys. I am Fernando Pimentel for The Fight Guys and BehindTheGloves.com in association with Pro Boxing Supplies. Returning crew,
Dominic Verdina for RingTV.com and IFL TV.
Cynthia Conti for my own YouTube channel and RingTV.com.
And Stephen Guarino, KO Artist Sports on YouTube.
as you can see to the left of me, we have K2 Managing Promoter Tom Loeffler. We are here to discuss many topics. Obviously, Canelo versus Triple G, the AJ versus Vladimir Klitschko rematch, and plenty of other things. So, first off, Tom, the promotional tour is done. The press tour is over. Canelo versus Triple G, September 16th at T-Mobile Arena. Obviously, we know what the fighters need to do right now. They're going into training camp. They're getting ready for the date. What do you, as a promoter, do to help promote the fight at this point in time?
Well, there's still a lot of things to do. You know, all the promotional artwork, the marketing plan, you know, through HBO, for the pay-per-view, for the ticket sales, coordinating everything with the MGM and T-Mobile up in Vegas. So there's really, even though the fight is set and the promotional tour, you know, it was a whirlwind tour last week. But now there's a lot of things to lead up to it. You know, the 24/7. We're going to do 24/7s. HBO's going to film under the lights.
Nice.
We're going to do a training video between Abel Sanchez and Eddie Reynoso on Ring TV as well. So
That's good. That's exciting.
there's a lot of different elements to this. Canelo is the biggest star that Under Armour has in boxing, and Triple G is the biggest star that Jordan has in boxing. So it's Jordan versus Under Armour. So it's a lot of interesting things. Canelo is sponsored by Hennessy. Triple G is sponsored by Chivas. So it's a lot of different combinations for the promotion.
I wanted to ask, during the promotional tour, obviously you guys are all very close together all the time. Triple G and Canelo have talked about how they were friends before. And kind of in the past 2 years or so, kind of the build-up to this fight, at least Canelo's kind of said that the friendship has kind of soured a little bit. I asked them both about it, but what were your kind of like, when you kind of being there behind the scenes, kind of seeing their interaction together, like were they friendly together? Was it mostly like, you know, it's business, we'll be friends later? Like kind of what was that interaction like between both of them?
It was definitely business. I'd say it was cordial. I think the biggest word is they both respect each other. You know, they've sparred with each other, you know, a number of years ago. You know, a few times, so they're very familiar with each other in the ring. Obviously, Canelo has gotten, you know, more in the prime. I think it was about 5 years ago when they sparred with each other. So they both have a lot of respect for each other. Gennady thinks that Canelo is a special talent, and he really looks at this as a challenge where he can really let his skills shine. Abel Sanchez has said, we've never seen the best Triple G in the ring, and I think now, September 16th, you're going to see the best Triple G on display.
Well, when you say that, okay, we're going to take this back a little bit. I wasn't on the promotional tour. I was sick, so I couldn't even ask anyone any questions. Let's go back to March 18th. We're going back to Madison Square Garden when it was Triple G versus Jacobs.
Yeah, another sold-out show at Madison Square Garden.
And it was a great show, and that was the show that he won a unanimous decision, but that was a show that he was exposed, as everyone's saying. Do you think Canelo and his team watched that fight and said, let's make this fight happen, because he saw his weaknesses? It's been, what, 3 years in the making or more for you guys to hopefully make this?
Just about 2 years. When Canelo really wasn't on Triple G's radar screen until he beat Cotto and won the WBC middleweight title. He was always junior middleweight, and you know, we tried to do the fight with Sergio Martinez. Sergio chose to fight Cotto first.
Yeah.
Cotto became middleweight champion, although he never fought at 160 pounds, and then he fought Canelo, who also didn't fight at 160 pounds, so we were kind of like stuck in that whole like washing machine of the WBC mandatory. But when Canelo beat Cotto, that's when they were kind of on a collision course. You know, WBC ordered the mandatory. Canelo at that point last year chose not to fight him. He was actually exposed, you know, supposedly against Kell Brook when a welterweight was landing punches on Triple G, had a big uppercut on him, and somehow his orbital bone got fractured in the process. It was still
the first one.
He was still exposed. So
Kell Brook had moments.
Yeah.
But you know what I do give Kell Brook? He stepped up to the plate to fight Gennady.
No question. You know, it was a frustrating time last year when Canelo didn't take the fight, when Gennady wanted to unify with Billy Joe Saunders. He was willing to go to the UK. Saunders, that discussion didn't go very far. Then Eddie Hearn heard that we were looking to go to the UK, or willing to go to the UK. And that's when he proposed to Eubank Jr., which would have been a great promotion over there. And then about a month later, Eddie said, you know what, they won't sign the contract. We can't finalize the deal. And then he said, well, he was having problems doing Kell Brook and Vargas at the time. So I said, let me call Kell, see if he'll take the fight. 2 hours later, he calls me back, he'll take the fight. We literally just changed the name from Eubank Jr. to Kell Brook. And that's how that fight got done. But going back to your original question, I think Canelo and Golden Boy were definitely watching the Jacobs fight. I wouldn't say because of that fight, the fight got made, but it certainly didn't hurt. Put it that way. It didn't hurt. I mean, Oscar always said that we would do the fight in September 2017. Here we are. The fight's going to happen September 16th, so I got to give him credit for that. He stuck to his word. Canelo stuck to his word. Gennady really felt, you know, when they had a respect for each other from the sparring and a mutual respect for their talents, Gennady really felt disrespected when Canelo brought him in the ring and said, you know, basically the fight's going to happen, and then 2 weeks later vacated the title. So even when we signed the agreement right before the Chavez fight, literally the week of the Chavez fight, Gennady still didn't, somehow in his mind there was still a doubt, because he was supposed to fly up to Vegas on Friday. And he's like, nah, I don't really want to go on Friday. And we're like, you know, this would be a big deal. They want to announce the fight on HBO. If Canelo wins, if he doesn't get hurt, you know, they want to make the announcements. Right. Then Gennady flew up there. We were sitting in the front row watching the fight. Everyone on our side was hoping, you know, he didn't get injured, didn't get cut. Right.
That must be like nerve-wracking, right? Like, I don't like when their heads get close together, things like that. Like,
it's interesting when you're rooting for the guy that you're gonna fight next time.
That's true.
You know, and he has a lot of respect for Chavez Jr. Also, he's very close with the family, with Chavez Sr., and has a lot of respect for them. But we're certainly rooting for Canelo to win, to set up this fight, and that's what happened. And that was actually the highlight of that night, when Gennady came into the ring, kind of WWE style.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought that was more exciting than the
actual fight.
True.
Yeah.
Well, you got your $80 worth of.
A little bonus, yeah.
But when he, real fast, since there were so many fights last year that didn't happen, frustrating for you and frustrating for Gennady, was he getting bored with the sport, or was he just kind of doubting, why isn't any fighter stepping up to the plate to take my belt? I'm not a fighter, but I would think if you want to be the #1 fighter, you're going to fight that #1 fighter. Why is everyone so scared to fight him?
That's the way it's always been. I mean, I've been in boxing over 25 years. I've never experienced someone who has the marketability of Triple G, had, you know, multiple titles, and we're basically asking guys, okay, let's unify titles. Let's the champions fight each other to see who's the best fighter. And literally, I wouldn't even get a response. It wasn't even like, well, most people would ask for crazy money, but a lot of times it wasn't even, they wouldn't even engage in the negotiations. The best line, and this is what Peter Nelson at HBO always heard, was, you know, we'll fight Triple G, but not next, you know, next year maybe, but not in the next fight. Like, they weren't afraid of him, but they didn't want to fight him right away. And somehow they had to be more prepared to fight him. I mean, so many fighters had that answer for HBO, and then HBO, to their credit, said, okay, if we can't get the big names to fight Triple G, we're just going to keep putting him on the air against the guys that will actually fight him. And that's how we built the Triple G brand and the fan following that he had. He sold out MSG, sold out StubHub. He broke the record at StubHub for the ticket sales. He
standing room only, I remember that.
Yeah,
I was like, wow, that's a good idea. Because literally standing there is, I tell people all the time, it's one of the best arenas to watch boxing. And then I tell people, literally, you're standing above the seats, and it's a good seat.
Yeah.
And so when you guys had that idea for standing room only, I was like, it's a damn good idea.
And standing room, we had bleachers. We put an extra bleachers. That was the first time for boxing that's ever happened, and that was that was one of my favorite fights ever, as far as the promotional side, because you're under the Southern California sky, and then you have that great energy for Rubio and for Triple G, and the Mexican fans were chanting Triple G. It was just, that was a special night. Yeah.
That walk-in was awesome too.
His walk-ins are always great.
I remember watching them. Where are they going? I was like,
oh my god!
First like, where are they?
Yeah, that's what we kind of
I
started.
do remember that.
Yeah, we started that as a trademark for Triple G to walk through the fans as a respect for the fans coming out. I mean, we did that with Curtis Stevens, where we walked down the aisle at the theater in Madison Square Garden, and we just kind of continued it from there, and the fans really appreciate that.
Tom, can you elaborate a little more for us the excitement behind this build-up of Canelo versus Triple G, and what was Gennadi's reaction when he was told that the fight was going to happen? I need to hear this. I need to know.
For as frustrated as he was last year, you know, when what you had mentioned, I wouldn't say he was getting bored, but he was getting frustrated. He's just like, you know, what else do we have to do? How much money do we have to offer, you know, these people to fight? And you know, 23 knockouts in a row didn't make my job easy. You know, but as frustrated as he was last year, you know, he got the Danny Jacobs fight. That was a great fight. You have to give a lot of credit to Danny Jacobs. You know, physically he was bigger than Gennady, but he put on a great show. He really rose to the occasion. You know, under the spotlight of Madison Square Garden, on HBO pay-per-view, on, you know, it was all over you know, over 100 countries worldwide. So that really raised. That's one of those fights where you can say Danny lost the fight, but he really raised his profile. You know, he really gained a lot of respect.
A talented fighter.
You know, people were saying, you know, Gennady's going to knock him out, and I'm like, well, you know, Danny's a really good fighter. You know, and Gennady said he had a lot of respect for him. He knew him from the amateurs. He said, you know, he was the best amateur coming from the West Coast. You know, I'm sorry, from the East Coast. You know, which produces so many great fighters, and Gennady had a lot of respect for him. And you know, going 12 rounds, looking, you know, not superhuman, looking irregular. I think that kind of helped make the fight with Canelo. And you know, here we are. As frustrated as he was last year, he's so excited for this fight, so motivated to get back in the training camp and all the promotional items that go with this. You know, a lot of fighters just kind of lock themselves in the camp.
Yeah.
They don't promote the fight. They don't promote themselves. And Gennady is that special talent where he's really exciting in the ring. He has a lot of respect for the sport and for his opponents outside the ring, and he'll also help promote and market the fight. And that's what's allowed us to take him from virtually unknown when he made his HBO debut in September 2012 to almost 5 years later to the day where he's going to be the biggest fight in the sport of boxing.
And he's by far one of the nicest people I've ever met outside of boxing. He's a sweet guy. Now, why has Gennady been vocal about retirement? Is that something he's just putting out there, or
he wasn't vocal? I mean, that was just, it was kind of a funny thing on TMZ when we were down there at the studio, and you know, he was saying, well, my wife wants to spend more time with me, so if I beat Canelo, maybe I'll retire.
And now it's become, he's going to retire. He's going to retire.
Time off is retiring.
I mean, he's been one of the most active champions. Really,
That's true. That's true.
The most active champion, you know, in the last 5 years. As far as, you know, one time he fought 4 times a year. He's been averaging, you know, 3 title defenses per year. Last year was really an anomaly where he only fought twice. Since I started working with him, it was the first time he only fought twice. But we had the Canelo thing with the WBC. Then we had the delay with Danny Jacobs. We were supposed to fight in December, and that got pushed back to March. So there were a lot of factors. It wasn't because he didn't want to fight or couldn't fight 3 times a year, but a lot of times when you get to that level and you're dealing with mandatories, then you're kind of at the mercy of the other side as well. But you know, if he's successful September 16th, I think he'll deserve he'll get a much deserved rest, especially finally getting that big fight that he's been looking for.
You stated earlier that Canelo is the biggest superstar right now in boxing. Talk to us about some of the things that we've heard from the negotiation, and like now Triple G, who is the champ, he'll have to walk in second. That Canelo does have a rematch clause if he loses, but if Triple G loses, there is no rematch clause there. So talk to us about that and how that came to be.
You know, I think there were concessions on both sides. It was a lot of back and forth. I started really the negotiation for this fight with Eric Gomez. I checked back on my email. Someone asked me, like, when did you actually start negotiating? I remember it was November 2nd last year.
I actually have a story about that too.
When we started, you know, negotiating.
Right, that was in December. Go ahead.
Yeah. And you know, then we took a break over the holidays, and then we resumed again. I mean, both sides wanted the fight. It was just a matter of, you know, Gennady certainly had, you know, he had a tough fight against Danny Jacobs. You know, at that point, they weren't sure who Canelo was going to fight in May, but, you know, Chavez Jr. is a much bigger guy than Canelo. That was the first time he fought, really above the middleweight limit. And now, we're telling people Canelo actually has to come down to fight Triple G.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
164 is that.
Some of the Canelo weight, Canelo they call it.
This is a true middleweight, championship limit, and arguably the two best middleweights. It's really a throwback fight. Not only do you have the two most marketable guys in boxing, but they're both in the prime of their career. They're both the best in the middleweight division, and this is really a throwback fight to what the middleweight division represented when you have so many great matchups, with Hagler and Carlos Marzon and Hearns and Duran and Ray Leonard. I mean, there's just so many great names.
Yeah.
But, this is really kind of a throwback fight to that era.
Obviously, us being media members, we get to press conferences, we get to weigh-ins, we get to see a lot of backstage things. I didn't make it to this weigh-in, but Steven did, and going back onto what you said November. So tell him about the thing that happened at the weigh-in for Bernard Hopkins.
Bernard Hopkins weigh-in.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay.
And I was in the back.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
And they were doing all the, the checking of the gloves and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember asking you for an interview, and you said yeah, and then I think you got like a phone call real quick, and then you happened to talk to Eric Gomez. And I was just kind of getting my camera set together, and I actually remember you kind of. I heard you and Eric kind of like.
Record.
Yeah, I was like, hey, what's going on over there? No, I didn't know. But I just heard you and Eric talking, and I think Robert was there from Golden Boy.
Yes,
and he said something. He was like, oh, so September next year, it's good, and you were like, yep. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like. We have nothing to talk about in September other than, but and then I interviewed you after, and I think actually the day after is when you released that the Jacobs fight was official. Because I think that Friday it was still like the rumor, and it was pretty sure or whatever.
It's been brewing inside of him.
But
he's like, I need to say something.
I think maybe. But
But
I'm sure that's. And you said you guys got the email. You got emails in November, so I'm sure you guys had already kind of started talking about it. I wanted to ask you. We all know, you kind of mentioned earlier, Canelo, Triple G was the WBC mandatory, and then Canelo dropped the belt. Triple G was the champion, he was the super champion.
He's the first champion from Mexico to drop a WBC.
Right, yeah.
And it's such a beautiful belt too.
Yeah,
I mean,
and it's so now it's kind of well known that WBC and Canelo kind of have their issues. Yeah. So I'm just curious, will the WBC belt be on the line for this? Because
Gennady's definitely going to defend all of his titles. Okay. He's got the 4 titles. Canelo's bringing the Ring Magazine title, which Gennady has universally been considered the best middleweight. I would say at least for 3 of the last 5 years, but he's finally going to get the chance of fighting for the Ring Magazine as well. But he'll definitely be defending all of his titles in the agreement. Canelo can choose if he wants to fight for all of them, or challenge for all of them, or challenge for one of them, or challenge for none of them. So they haven't really made that official yet. He's kind of made it clear in the media that he's not going to fight for WBC.
Yes.
But Gennady will definitely be defending his titles.
If Triple G is victorious against Canelo, is there still a missing puzzle to the missing piece of the puzzle of all the belts? Because Joe Sanders has the WBO.
If he's successful, he still wants to unify all the titles. I mean, that's always been his goal. And that's been so elusive, to get the other champions to actually fight him. That's why we give David Lemieux. That was another co-promotion with Golden Boy. Yeah, was the Lemieux fight in Madison Square Garden. Yeah, he came from Kazakhstan versus a guy from Canada, and they sold out Madison Square Garden, which is
that was a great fight.
It's not very easy to sell out Madison Square Garden. There, you got to have a special event to do that, and so that's why we give Lemieux credit, because he was the first champion to actually say, okay, I'll risk getting in the ring with my title and unify with Triple G, and but that would be the missing piece as far as what he's always said. The only way, he said, the only way he can prove that he's the best in the middleweight division if he fights the best, and by definition the other champions would be the best in the division, and so Saunders, my understanding is Saunders is going to fight in the UK. On the same night, on September 16th, so it'll be kind of a lead-in. Saunders will be in the UK Live, and then it'll lead into our show.
Did they find an opponent for him?
They're working on an opponent, yeah. I don't know if Saunders regrets calling Kurt Sietze Danny DeVito. Yeah. but they're gonna find a
That's-
they're going to find a different opponent for him on the 16th for him to defend his title, and then if Saunders wins, if Triple G wins, then that would kind of be the natural next step to try to unify. But that's easier said than done.
I want to ask you. You mentioned about the fight at the StubHub and how you guys had to have the bleachers and the standing room only and stuff like that, and how, like you said, there's like the whole Mexican crowd is rooting for Triple G, and it seems
Not
kind of
all
like
of them, maybe 90%.
right, yeah. He had family there, I guess. but I just kind of like talk about that like kind of grassroots movement. It seemed like it really kind of started kind of like an underground rapper or something. You know what I mean? Where it's just like everyone kind of heard about him. He's selling out shows, like you said. He sold out shows in England. He shows up MSG a few times. Everywhere he goes, he sells out the Forum.
Yeah.
And kind of my second part to that question is, do you see maybe Triple G's fans kind of outnumbering Canelo fans or maybe it's split like?
I would see. I could easily see it be split. You know, I think the tickets are so hard to get. It just depends on which side gets the tickets.
Right.
But as far as the international fan base, you know, when you look at all the UK fans that Gennady had when he went over there, sold out 02. You know, we got people flying in from Australia regularly to see him fight. You know, naturally all of his Kazakh fans that fly in, the other European fans when he fought in Germany. He made a lot of fans, and you know, just and even the Mexican fans. You know, there's going to be a lot of Mexican fans that are going to be for Triple G that night.
Yeah. Wearing Triple G hats. Like I asked Lampley about that actually, and he mentioned. I asked him about Chavez, and he was like, you know, who knows what's going to happen. This was before, obviously. Yeah. He's like, but Canelo needed to fight somebody because once he fights Triple G, he doesn't want a whole crowd of Mexican fans wearing Triple G hats.
That's true, and that really, it really has been a grassroots movement. That's a good way to put it, because, you know, our goal to bring him here to the States and have him fight was to build him up in the media capital of the world, which was New York City, and there's no better place than Madison Square Garden. So we brought him to the theater and had the fight against Gabe Rosado. You know, the HBO debut was up in Turning Stone, so that was one of those where we didn't really have control of the show. That was a show with Artie Palulu. He was actually, what a lot of people seem to forget, he was supposed to fight Pirog on that show. It was originally that date. The reason why we got that slot, and I've been pushing HBO and Showtime. I've been pushing both of them. You know, Triple G's the undefeated WBA middleweight champion. He'll fight anyone. He doesn't need a lot of money. He just wants the exposure. And then HBO was the first one to really agree to it, but kind of reluctantly, because that original date was Daniel Geale, who was the IBF middleweight champion, against Pirog, who was a WBO middleweight champion. Supposed to be a unification fight.
That fighting you've been talking about.
And then Gennady was going to fight Sturm as the mandatory. Sturm got the exception from the WBA one more time because he was able to offer Geale more money to go to Germany and fight him than what Geale was making to fight Pirog. And so Geale went to Germany, and that left the open slot against Pirog. Nobody wanted to fight Pirog at the time after he beat Danny Jacobs.
Yeah.
So we jumped at the opportunity, and then 3 weeks before the fight, Pirog injured his back and couldn't fight. And then Artie came up with the most non-similar opponent to Pirog. Pirog was a big right-handed boxer, puncher, I should say, and he got the European champion from Poland, who was a slick southpaw mover. And you know, a lot of times, especially a champion would say, no, that's too much of a different style. And Abel didn't care, Gennady didn't care, and so we went through and took the fight. And when he had that knockout, then you know, it's really
what was that guy's name? I remember him being Polish, but I don't remember his
Boxa.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, because I remember he just beat somebody too. Yeah, he was good. Yeah.
Sebastian Silvestre.
That's who it was. Yeah, yeah.
It looked very impressive. I think in 3 rounds he stopped him. He was European champion.
Yeah.
So even though a lot of American fans didn't know who he was a solid guy. And when some people kind of critique the people that Gennady's fought, I mean, they have to look a little bit deeper, as to the lengths that we went through to get guys to fight him. I mean, Martin Murray, nobody wanted to fight Martin Murray when he controversially lost to Felix Sturm in Germany.
Yeah.
And then he fought Sergio Martinez in Argentina, he got credit for one knockdown, but arguably he knocked him down twice over there.
Very close fight.
And so there was nobody was like volunteering to fight him, and he couldn't get the visa for the U.S. So we actually made the fight over in Monte Carlo because he could go there, and so we were really looking for the best guys that would get in the ring with him, and that was just a perfect
That was
example.
11 rounds of brutality.
Yeah, no, but I remember thinking going into that, I was like, if G beats Martin Murray, like G's the real deal, because Martin Murray should be the middleweight champion,
Right.
Like, you know,
Twice
like,
sometimes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the sparring that Canelo and Triple G did, you know, 5-6 years back or whatever it was. Kind of, what have you heard about that from Abel, from G? Like, what was kind of your take that they gave you, like how it went?
You know, Gennady just says that they were helping each other prepare for fights. Canelo was training for a fight. Gennady was just up there happy to spar with whoever they could spar with them. So, you know, they were just working. Naturally, Canelo was much younger. I think he might have been 20 years old at that time, you know, 20, 21. And so, you know, Gennady was kind of an unknown commodity over here. But again, I think they just had a mutual respect because Gennady could see that Canelo was a special fighter at the time, even though he was young.
Yeah.
He still had that rare talent, and he respects that. And I think the same, you know, you could say that for Canelo. Now, naturally, you know, 6 years later, and Canelo, you know, having, you know, a number of fights under his belt, and Gennady, you know, dominating the middleweight division the way he has now, it's really, you know, kind of built up to where these guys are going to put the best of their skills on display in September.
It's just interesting. I watched on the Ring. They had an interview with Canelo after the sparring.
Okay.
And it's funny to hear Abel Sanchez is the one translating for him. It's funny. It's kind of like you hear that now, like wow, like, that's how it comes full circle.
Knowing years from now.
Yeah.
I think from that sparring, Doug Fisher actually wrote about it, and it was like the first time said, you know, this guy is a tremendous guy that was sparring with Canelo. 'Cause Canelo was a known name.
Right.
And Gennady still, you know, hadn't had his, you know, television exposure over here, so he really wrote a big story like this is going to be the next star in boxing.
Are you expecting a knockout, or are you expecting this fight to go 12 rounds? Because Canelo has been very vocal about knocking out Triple G, and Triple G has never been down as an amateur or a pro.
Right.
What's your expectation in this fight?
You know, Abel has said he wouldn't be surprised if it goes 12 rounds just because Canelo's a durable guy. He's fast. He showed a tremendous amount of poise in the Chavez fight. You know, arguably, what was it?
I mean, do you really call it a fight against Chavez? I mean,
But I mean, he fought at what was it, like 14 pounds heavier than, or no, 9 pounds heavier than he's fought before. So you know that was a big jump in weight for him. Chavez physically was that bigger. I mean, you could say Chavez really was drained,
Yeah.
so he really didn't bring much to the table. But you really don't know, you know, how that's going to affect the fighter.
Yeah.
You know, Chavez looked like he was finally taking the fight serious.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
training.
Right.
And then you don't know, you know, he's a big guy, he's got talent, and maybe he could have landed one of those big punches they landed against Sergio Martinez.
Yeah.
Like, I think he ruined Sergio's career because he was losing pretty much every round. In the 12th round, and he almost had
almost
Sergio
won,
out.
yeah.
And you know, Sergio twisted his knee and hasn't been the same since then.
You're right.
So you know, it's hard to predict. I mean, naturally, after the fight, you can say, well, Chavez didn't really put up much of a fight, but you know, at the same time, I don't think Canelo allowed him to get into the fight. You know, he was throwing great combinations. He was very fast, and you could see his body was very muscular. He looked physically very strong at that weight. So I think at 160, you'll see, you know, Canelo really in his peak physical condition, and a very motivated Triple G, and that's what makes this fight so so intriguing. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an early knockout. I don't expect it, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it goes 12 rounds.
All right. Well, we're gonna switch gears because you put the middleweights back on. Like everyone wants to watch it, but heavyweights are back. I mean, it's where it's supposed to be. You've had
Just with that one
Klitschko.
fight, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's coming back, and I don't know. I mean, it's known that Eddie Hearn has said that Vegas is a front runner for a possible rematch.
Yeah.
Has Vladimir made a decision yet that you could possibly claim? Or
Why would you want to go to Vegas with 90,000 and
But
It works out for us.
it was, yeah. Or in Nigeria, I mean,
Yeah, there's offers
There's a lot of-
also from all over the place for that fight. I mean, that was such a tremendous fight the first time. And, Wembley Stadium, 90,000 people,
can't beat that.
that's an atmosphere, that was a special atmosphere. Out of every fight that I've seen, that was really, that was the top. As far as the emotion in the crowd and just the energy and the excitement, the guys walking in the ring, and that was exciting. But so Vladimir hasn't made his decision yet. If they do fight, and Eddie's kind of intrigued with the numbers that we were generating for this fight, and even though 90,000 people in Wembley Stadium, that's the most number of people, but Las Vegas would really generate a lot higher revenue than even 90,000 people.
Yeah, they can offer higher site fee and stuff like that.
So, and I think Eddie's also looking at Joshua as being, a star also over here in America.
Absolutely.
He's conquered the UK market, and so to build him over here, similar to what we did when Gennady was a big star over here, we brought him over to the UK. He's looking at doing the same thing with Joshua. So I wouldn't be surprised if that fight winds up in Vegas, if the fight happens, and that would give the American fans a little bit more. I mean, it was broadcast live over here, really broadcast the same day on Showtime and HBO. That's the first time that's happened.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
impressive.
In a long time, and that just shows the how big of an event that was. So I think it would be a treat for the American boxing fans. I, as a boxing fan, would love to see the rematch. I think Vladimir was so close to winning that fight, and that's another definition, just like with Danny Jacobs. I think that's another definition of, Vladimir lost the fight, but he actually won in terms of gaining the respect of so many fans and saying, now really, really appreciate what Klitschko does in the ring, and if that fight happens again, I think there's a lot of fans that would want to see that.
It definitely produced a lot of memories.
Yeah. Is there like a time frame that Klitschko has kind of to decide? And is there does Joshua have an option to take a fight in between, or is that not an option yet?
That was an immediate rematch clause, but for both sides. But I don't think there was a hard deadline. But as you're getting closer to the fall, at some point, they'll decide if they want to do the rematch, and then we'll just look at what's the best venue for it.
As you stated earlier, 2016 was kind of frustrating, not just for Gennady and getting fights, but for boxing fans in general. Big fights weren't being made, some were delayed, like you said, Jacobs, Triple G. But 2017 so far has actually been somewhat of a banner year for boxing. Like, they've had great matches. They had the Frampton Santa Cruz rematch to start the year off. We had Jacobs and Triple G in March. We had Chavez Canelo, a fight that many Mexican fans and even boxing fans wanted to see. Might not have turned out the way we wanted it to go, but it was still a fight that we got to see. AJ versus Klitschko. With Danny Garcia, Broken Spence, Garcia Thurman.
Thurman was a great fight, yeah.
Porter Berto. We've gotten a lot of good fights coming out.
Chocolatito Sister Cat was a tremendous.
That was.
We get the rematch on September 9th.
I was there, and I could not believe it.
We get that rematch September 9th, the week before. And do you think 2017 is like the benchmark now for boxing? Like what they need to do to go forward to regain fans? Because this year, people have been talking more about boxing than they have in the past because they've been talking about more MMA. Yeah. Boxing kind of retook a lot of the MMA momentum this year. Do you think going forward, boxing needs to look at 2017 and say, okay, this is what we need to do. This is the formula to get boxing back to where it was?
I really don't think it's that complicated. It's I think 2017 is really the best year that I can remember as far as overall boxing. And I really look at the Canelo Triple G fight as kind of the icing on the cake. But when you make the fights that the fans want to see, the fans will respond. You'll get the TV ratings, you'll get the sold out arenas. If Joshua had fought somebody else, there's no way they would have fought. They would have gotten 90,000 people in Wembley Stadium. He would have fought at the O2 again and sold out the O2, and it's kind of like that type of thing. And if Canelo's not fighting Triple G or vice versa, you wouldn't have this type of reaction. So, when you make the fights the fans want to see, that's when they'll respond. And I really think it's kind of a lesson to for the promoters to work together. I mean, with this September 9th show, not only with the Chocolatito rematch with
The
Sister
triple
Cat.
header, yeah.
In a way, a lot of people are looking forward to seeing Inoue fight live over here.
Oh, I've been talking about that for a very long time.
He's one of those guys that, just like with Triple G, where a lot of people have heard about him or heard about his punching power. You know, Inoue's got kind of this mystique as far as, you know, already being on some of the pound for pound lists, and no one's ever seen him.
Yeah.
So, at least not over here. In Japan, naturally, he's a star, but, you know, he's got a great matchup against Nieves from Cleveland. And then you got Quadras against Estrada.
Yeah,
I mean, when you got those,
little
you got those six, that's probably the best collection of 6 fighters on a show in one division that I've ever seen.
You and you don't have a venue right now. We're trying, almost.
I want to ask you about that because, you know, like Chocolatito was, you know, kind of universally the #1 pound for pound fighter. Then he lost. And I was kind of afraid.
He lost controversially.
Controversially, right? I mean, but you know,
that's why
he takes the loss,
yeah.
exactly. And luckily, it was controversial, I think, because I was afraid when he lost that kind of HBO would abandon the division, and with all these guys that you just said, and you know, all these matchups that can be made, I was like, man, like I really don't want to like not see these guys anymore. I really want these guys to get the platform they deserve. Like, is it difficult to kind of try to convince HBO to kind of go into divisions that maybe they're not used to or aren't like generally popular or whatever? I mean, how did you do? You've got 6 of the top, like you just said, the top guys in the division, like all fighting each other. It's amazing.
It wasn't easy, and it's actually each guy is a different promoter. So I was dealing with 6 different promoters.
Yeah.
So you know, you got to give the fighters and the promoters credit for you know, agreeing to fight each other on that show. But that's what boxing takes. It's not, you know, building my brand or building a promotional brand. It's like, let's put on the best show for the fans. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but I think September 9th is going to be, a lot of people told me once we announced it on social media, it was like, this is the best show of the year, you know, as far as like top to bottom. And that's why so many people are waiting for where the venue's going to see where
tickets,
they're
hotels and stuff.
Okay, this is the perfect segue because, and I told the guys what I want to talk to you about, besides Canelo, Triple G, Klitschko. A lot of people don't know about you. And I did my homework on you. A lot of people don't know about this man, Tom Loeffler. All right? He's the man, the myth, the legend, but you graduated in CNO High.
El Camino High.
El Camino, okay, thanks,
Woodland
Tom.
Hills.
With an E. But you're from here. And you've been a promoter for a while. You've been in boxing. You managed Shane Mosley, James Toney.
Yeah.
What's his name? I want to make sure. Kevin Kelly.
Kevin Kelly was the first fighter that we signed. He was from Flushing, Queens, New York, where you know, since I was working with Kevin as a manager and Obakar from Detroit, those were the first 2 guys. First 2 guys that we managed, and a lot of people thought I was based on the East Coast because one guy was from Detroit, one guy was from New York, and I remember Kevin Kelly. I mean, those were like the glory days when he was fighting at Madison Square Garden at the theater, and you'd see Buddy McGirt, who was the headliner, you know, welterweight champion, come in with his long fur coat, you know, in the winter time, his mink coat, and you know, it was just those were great days. Those were still, you know, Madison Square Garden, such a legendary arena, and Kevin Kelly was signed to Madison Square Garden Boxing. That's when Carl Moretti was the matchmaker, and so then it transitioned. You know, then we started working with Shane, which was really unusual because Kevin had brought Shane to New York when Kevin was training at Gleason's gym, and no one knew who Shane was on the East Coast. And so we're like, okay, you want to spar? We got this lightweight guy from the West Coast, and you know, looking for some sparring. And you know, the guys, you know, in Gleason's, they're pretty much easy over there, and they have some gym wars there. They want to prove that they're, you know. And so when Shane went in there, we didn't tell Jack. You know, Jack didn't let him spar. It's only supposed to be a promotional tour, but. No, but Shane, you know, naturally, I mean, Shane was such a great champion and such a talented fighter that, you know, he opened a lot of eyes at Gleason's gym, and Kevin kind of took him around and, you know, was helping him with a lot of the promotional stuff at the time. And Oba was, you know, I still think he was probably the best guy.
Uncrowned champion.
The best guy never to win a world title. I mean, he came up in the heyday of the welterweight division where you had, he fought Oscar.
He put Trinidad down in the second round.
Trinidad in Mexico, and then he lost to Icorte. I mean, those 3 guys, you know, he would beat everybody else, but he couldn't beat those 3 guys, and he never won a world title.
But you got to go even before that. He fought, I had to make sure my notes, Philip Holiday.
Which one? Oh, Shane,
Yeah, and
our deal,
he was the one, and I learned this about him. why you have such a great relationship with HBO. You've been working with them for so long, and you were the first one to put Shane Mosley on HBO.
Yeah, that's true.
I remember that fight
Fun
against Phil
facts
Holiday.
about you.
He was a little ill. That's how he says.
Yeah, he had some stomach.
Yeah, she
issues,
he said it on air.
Yeah, they actually told us. I mean, there's some interesting stories about that too, because you know Kevin Kelly was with Cedric Kushner at the time, so he had a good relationship with Cedric. Cedric had a partner, Rodney Berman, who was promoting Philip Holiday, and so our agreement with Shane, we had an advisor agreement with Shane. Our agreement with Shane was we'll guarantee nobody wanted to fight Shane. It was one of those anomalies. He was such a good fighter.
Sounds like a Triple G.
Yeah.
Wanted to fight him.
He didn't. Nobody wanted to fight him because everyone knew him from the amateurs. He dominated the amateurs here, and everyone, you know, from the sparring wars. He had so many wars with Gennaro Hernandez, and you know, in the gyms, LA boxing.
Yeah.
And so guys didn't want to fight him because in order to fight him, they wanted a lot of money.
Yeah.
But then Shane really wasn't on the promotional side. He wasn't really selling a lot of tickets. People didn't really know him out of like the hardcore boxing world. So when I talked to Cedric, I said, Cedric, you know, here's the perfect guy for you. You know, because I knew he was involved with Philip Holiday, and he was able to get that fight on HBO. So that was Shane's debut on HBO. Because he had the stomach issue, he didn't look as impressive as, you know, we were telling HBO this is going to be the best guy that you've ever seen. And then he won, but he wasn't as impressive as what we kept telling him was going to be. So then that was, Lou was at HBO still back then, and Lou said, you know, take a fight on USA Boxing, for example, and then, you know, we'll see about putting him back on.
USA Boxing was awesome back then.
And Shane had a great knockout, I think it was in Texas at the time, but wherever it was, he had a great knockout in USA, and then we got him back on HBO, and that's how Shane started on HBO, and then, you know,
he was one
had
hell of
the
a
fights with
lightweight.
Oscar and all that stuff.
And this is all pre K2. And then I learned
That's when I was
about
managing fighters.
June 21st of 2003. You're officially you're with Vitaly.
Yeah.
Vladimir's brother, if you all don't know. And he fought Lennox Lewis, and actually Lennox Lewis was supposed to fight Mike Tyson
Well,
at
actually,
Staples Center.
no, Lennox was going to fight
Kevin Johnson.
I heard
Kevin
this.
Johnson, and Vitaly was going to fight Cedric Boswell, but they were going to be on the same show.
Okay.
Tyson was going to be the co-feature. Lennox was a champion.
okay.
Tyson was the co-feature, but Tyson was a ticket seller.
Yeah.
Because Lennox didn't, you know, translate back then into selling a lot of tickets over here. But
Tyson's co-feature,
Tyson
interesting.
would
I know.
sell
Never heard
the
co-feature.
arena. And then, you know, I remember we were pulling up. Vitaly was a mandatory, WBC mandatory for Lennox at the time, and we were pulling up. It was myself and Vladimir, and we had the attorney in the car, and you know, I called ahead of time. I told them, you know, we're going to bring the guys down. We're not going to crash the press conference, but you know, just cordially, you know, come by and talk to the media. And then one of the media guys, Steve Kim, came out and he said, you know, Tyson's off the show. He's not fighting. And all of a sudden, a light went on my head. He's like, well, Tyson's off the show. They need someone. You know, Vitaly was a big Ukrainian population in LA, and Vitaly would sell a lot of tickets. He was super popular. So, you know, we had a good relationship with AEG at the time, and we got them to agree to put him on as the co-feature. And then what happened is Kevin Johnson injured himself.
Yeah.
Like 3 weeks before.
Yeah, it was like 3 or 2 weeks
Not
later.
Kevin Johnson. It was the other, but anyways, a Canadian.
I know what you're talking about.
The southpaw.
I know what you're talking about. I'm trying to remember his name.
And anyway, so he injured himself, and then they literally had, I think it was 3 weeks, maybe just under 3 weeks. They had the option of HBO was either going to cancel the show. That was pay-per-view back then.
That's right.
With both Lennox and Vitaly on the show, and then they were either going to cancel the show, or it's like, if you guys fight each other, then we'll put it on regular HBO, and that's what happened. That's what
6 grueling rounds.
that's how we made that fight. Yeah, 6 rounds. That was the best heavyweight fight that I've seen. You know, prior to this fight with Vladimir, and it was good.
Tom, can you elaborate for us? Because I remember when Vitaly Klitschko quit against Chris Bird, and he said he didn't quite understand why the American public turned against him. He didn't understand what was so wrong with quitting in a fight. Because I remember when he fought Lennox Lewis, he didn't quit. He wanted to keep going and was angry at the referee. Can you talk to us about what happened against Chris Bird and why he did not understand the formula behind becoming a heavyweight champion and remaining champion to the very end?
I think that was just not all the information coming out in the German media. It was widely reported, how severe that injury was. Vitaly said in the second round he injured it, and as it was going, it was just like he was getting like flashes of pain, and then all of a sudden, like it was like he couldn't see. It was like so painful, like white flashes in his eyes, and it wasn't fully reported. Naturally, it's so easy to sit back and say, well, he was winning the fight. He just needed one more round or two more rounds. It was 2 more rounds, and then he could have won the fight. But he literally couldn't lift his arm, and then the doctor said, when they did the surgery and saw how bad the injury was, like if you would have kept fighting, it's possible it would have been so damaged that maybe it would have been permanently damaged. So that wasn't reported to the full extent. HBO, I think Lou also was involved in that fight, and had some critical things to say of Vitaly. But Vitaly is one of those guys that you can never question his heart. I mean, he'll stand there. I mean, look at what he's doing for his country, Ukraine, right now. He's in Ukraine. You saw, like, with the uprising, he's standing there in fire extinguishers.
He's like right in the middle of it.
That's nothing.
He told me a story once where he grew up like in a military family, and they would have to go to different military bases as the father got stationed in different places. And one time, when you're the new guy, kind of like in the school or the military base, other people kind of try to test you. And one time he said literally he was surrounded by like 10 or 12 guys. And, luckily he didn't have to really confront them, but he's like, to me, it's like if there's one guy in the ring with me, that's easy. He's used to fighting, all these guys, and it's like,
She's like, good Lord guy.
It's just Lennox Lewis.
And the Lennox fight, I think, really showed, especially the American public, what kind of heart he had, because there was no way he was gonna stop that fight. He just wanted to keep going. He was so much on adrenaline. I don't think he even felt the eye. It wasn't bothering him. I mean, it was bleeding, but the cut man had it under control. Every time he came out of the ring, it was, even though it was a really bad cut, it wasn't bleeding into his eye. And so that was actually a little bit of a controversial stoppage because
I remember he was angry.
He was winning.
He was angry. He was winning. He was winning 4 rounds to 2. And when Lennox landed that monster uppercut that would have probably taken anyone else's head off and knocked anyone out, and when Vitaly took it and then kept coming forward, I think Lennox was done mentally. He's like, if I land my best punch and I can't hurt this guy, what am I going to do?
That's why he never came back.
And Vitaly kept going forward, and if you watch the end of the fight, if you watch it closely, Lennox basically collapsed in his stool. He was completely exhausted.
He was exhausted. I remember that.
Exhausted, and Vitaly, walked back to his stool, and the referee called the doctor in to look at the tongue because that was a new injury. The referee said that the eye wasn't getting worse. I was bad. There's no question I was bad, but it wasn't getting progressively worse. But there was a new injury with the tongue, and he wanted to make sure Vitaly wasn't swallowing too much blood. So he called the doctor in to look at the tongue, and then the doctor stopped it on the eye. Plastic surgeon that sewed up the eye afterwards. He put in like 67 stitches.
Oh my God!
Right.
3 different layers. But he said the eye was never in danger, like as far as the nerve. I mean, naturally you can't question it like during the fight. Okay, you want to protect the fighter. It's just Vitaly knows his body, and I don't think he would have, just like with his arm, if he knew there was a chance of his eye being damaged, he wouldn't want it to continue. But for him, it was just superficial. There was a lot of blood. There was cuts, but it wasn't anything that was going to affect his eye. And when the doctor stopped it, he was just really he was so upset. He couldn't. And then, like you said, Lennox
Tired.
Instead of
he's like, I'm out.
It gives that guy another chance that it could go a different way. But that was another fight where even though Vitaly lost, he gained so many fans. I mean, that was when he stood on the ropes, his blood was dripping down his face.
It's like eyebrows on his
hand. Raised his hand, and fans were going crazy. They were cheering for him. When he walked in, naturally everyone knew Lennox Lewis as a champion, and so probably 80% of people were cheering for Lewis and booing Vitaly. After the fight, I'd say it switched, where 80% or at least 70% were cheering for Vitaly because he just won over all the fans. And then when we did the fight, when Lewis retired and the WBC title became vacant, that's when we did the fight with Corey Sanders, who unfortunately he's no longer with us. But that was at Staples Center in that was a tremendous victory for Vitaly.
Yeah, he got revenge on his brother.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, just you mentioned earlier that with the Chocolatito card, there's 6 different promoters you're working with. Obviously, you're working with Golden Boy. I remember talking to Abel once. I think I asked you this before, but like Abel said something about I think he was talking about working with Saunders or trying to put together the Saunders match.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, he's like, like Tom, works with Eddie. He was like, Tom, everyone likes Tom. And then when he said that, I was like, you're right. I was like, I've never heard any issue about, kind of Bob Arum and obviously Don King had their issues back in the day. Then kind of Golden Boy and Bob Arum had issues, and now like, PBC, kind of all that stuff.
HBO was surprised when I told HBO, we did the fight with Dominic Wade, who was with Al, and with Danny Jacobs. They were convinced the Jacobs fight would never happen. I said, no, I have a good relationship with Al, and he told me it was going to happen, and Al stuck to his word. Everything that was agreed, they followed through, and we have to give Danny a lot of credit. He carried a lot of the promotion on his side, being from New York, and that was another sold-out arena. But
Like, speak on that. Why is it that, just everyone seems to like you? You get along with everyone. Like, is it what is it that other people, other promoters aren't doing? I guess
he has that very cool, calm demeanor. That's what it is.
Before you answer it, like based on who you represented and the fights that you put on, it attests to your success because you put on some of the best fights, exciting fights, and the fights that fans want to see, because we're, like you said, you're a boxing fan first and foremost. So that is why I mean, anyone that wants to be a promoter, he has the blueprint. I mean, figure it out. This is the guy you want to emulate right here. Okay, go ahead, you can answer.
Well, I kind of put my ego aside. A lot of promotional companies want to build their fighters, and at the risk of putting on a worse show, they'll build their fighters instead of trying to put on the better show. Working with the fighters, we thought it was a great combination with Chocolatito and Triple G. Arguably the 2 best pound-for-pound fighters at the time, and that was, a small guy, middleweight guy. It kind of like gave the fans, a great value for their money. Even at the Rubio fight at StubHub, if you remember, that was Nicholas Walters against
Donaire.
Donaire, and it was Top Rank, and Top Rank had the co-feature. We didn't have to give the co-feature to Top Rank, but that was the best fight, both for HBO and for the fans. that was a tremendous matchup. Nonito Donaire had so many great Filipino fans here in LA, and Nicholas Walters, was his big, puncher to make it. And so that was a great matchup. And so, we had agreed when HBO proposed that, instead of saying, no, we want to put on one of the fighters we work with, said, no, that's great. That's a great fight for the fans. And it worked out to be, just additional value, because if you look back in hindsight, even though Triple G's had a lot of knockouts early, we've never had any complaints from the fans. That was a second-round knockout with Rubio, and because the show was so great, nobody was complaining. And they understand he's a big puncher, so they're not surprised, if there's a knockout. But as long as it's a competitive fight, and they know, Gennady, has the power, then they love seeing knockouts, and that's what they.
I know. I've said this. Exactly. I was about to say that. I have to commend you, because I know I've told you previously in other interviews that you've been able to give fight fans what they wanted, and that's working with other promoters and getting other fighters on your fight card. Most promoters wouldn't do that.
Even the Kell Brook fight with Eddie Hearn, Eddie said, there's a lot of guys who are popular in the U.S. would never come to the U.K. and fight. So many champions are just based like one city or one state, and they won't
on
be
board at one point. Never left.
But either way, we've always said Gennady's a world champion. He wants to bring the world definition back to world champion. He's fought in 7 different countries, so many different cities. And Eddie gave us a lot of credit that coming over to, you're dealing with the fans, you're dealing with a different athletic commission, you're dealing with hotel, different food. It's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, we're going to go here and fight over there. We're going to go there. That's why I give Ali so much credit. When he fought Foreman in Zaire, when he fought Frazier in the Philippines, and he just fought all over the world. That's really what we were trying to base. Abel was basing Gennady's style on Chavez Sr., the Mexican style, and the constant pressure and the body shots and the cutting off the ring. And I was really building, basing his promotional value and his marketability on what Ali accomplished just from all over, fighting all over the world. And Gennadi's one of those guys, he doesn't care where he fights, doesn't care who he fights, and he wants to put on a show for the fans. So it's really kind of a winning combination. And now, again, I think with this Canelo fight, it's kind of the cherry on the top of what we've been working for the last 5 years.
You being a promoter, you being a fan, and as you said, you pretty much helped just make the fight that all fight fans want. Boxing, what is it? Is it a sport? Is it a business? Or is it entertainment? Or is it all three combined?
I think it's really all three combined, but a lot of times people forget the entertainment value. There's a lot of fighters who just focused on, again, just training for a fight and just winning for a fight, even if it's a boring 12-round decision or even a controversial decision. Gennady and Abel has never had that philosophy. Abel has ingrained in Gennady, people are buying tickets, they're paying money for tickets, they're paying money for pay-per-views, they're spending their Saturday evenings watching TV. You have to entertain them because there's so many champions, so many fighters, that if you want to, rise above the crowd, that you have to put in, a consistent entertainment, and you have to really go out there, even to the point of if he has to take a few punches, not, foolishly, put his chin out there, but, he's taking punches he didn't have to take, but those have produced the openings for him to get the knockout. I remember the Daniel Geale knockout. That was one of the highlight knockouts of his career.
He was getting punched at the same time as Geale.
So, it's one thing, and he's kind of at that level where he can measure distance, he can measure the opponent's strength, and, I wouldn't say he planned that sequence, but he was already throwing when Geale landed his punch, and it was a spectacular knockout, and it was another highlight reel for him. And if he had like boring decisions or controversial decisions, he probably wouldn't be at the place.
Exactly.
I can try to promote as much as I can, but if you don't have a marketable fighter, there's only so much you can do. And if he wasn't so willing, this promotional tour was just a grueling tour. But that's what you have to do to make a successful event, not only the event, but also the Triple G brand. If you go into, I think Gennady's going to go down as the fighter with the most sponsorships representing global brands that we've seen in a long time. He's one of the only 2 athletes with a Jordan brand.
Yeah.
Right now, he's the only ambassador for Hublot watches, brand ambassador. He's the only boxer that they've made a Triple G. They made a Triple G edition. They work with Kobe Bryant, they work with Pele, they work with so many iconic names.
That's amazing.
They have Triple G as their brand ambassador. Shivas, I'm wearing the Shivas shirt today. He just did a video shoot with them on Tuesday. All day, that's another thing. People don't. They see the commercial.
For a fighter who's preparing himself.
He was on the Apple commercial as well.
Of his life.
Apple Watch commercial. Yeah, Shivas,
that's right.
Shivas might be a 30-second commercial, 60-second commercial, maybe online, maybe 3 minutes. But he was there for 6 hours. That's like doing different takes and different things. So Shivas, he did the Apple Watch commercial. He's sponsored by Bijan, who's the designer on Rodeo Drive. Bijan. It's really it's wild. It's almost like Disneyland in there because he has Nicholas Bijan is he's the son of the founder of Bijan. Iconic. He always had the billboards on Sunset Boulevard with the fragrance. At the LA press conference, the first one was if you remember, when he was nominated for Fighter of the Year at the ESPYs, when he was walking the red carpet with Ronda Rousey. He had that yellow jacket on. That was classic Bijan. And then Bijan made for the London press conference, for New York and LA, 3 different suits.
Oh, wow.
So that red jacket.
LA was the red jacket that stood out on the red carpet.
That's nice.
And, when you walk in,
to appeal to his Mexican fans.
But when you walk in the store, he's got the presidents there, like Bill Clinton. There's photos of him, George Bush, Obama, all these presidents that have shot there, and then heads of states from different countries, and then you see Triple G, like in the ring with the Bijan logo.
So awesome.
He's the only one that they sponsor.
Do you think not only is he just marketable, but it's also you that help? Because another fun fact I learned about Mr. Tom Loeffler is that back in the day, you put a whole campaign together for K-Swiss. There was no one of your kind doing this, putting him, making commercials, getting boxers sponsorships, and putting him on internet or national commercials.
It was a national commercial. It was with Obakar,
Yeah.
It was before he fought Oscar, and it was a K-Swiss commercial, and everyone said, how did you get Oba on a K-Swiss commercial on network TV, So
That's awesome.
That's really my background. Was when the way I got into boxing was a good friend of mine from high school. He was representing a lot of retired athletes, legends in the sport when they were making appearances, signing autographs, doing memorabilia. It was like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Joe Namath, Sandy Koufax, Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but his biggest client was Ali. And so through Ali, he wanted to sign active boxers. That's how we signed Kevin Kelly and Obakar as managing, but he didn't really know. He was a wizard with the memorabilia. He didn't really know much about managing boxers. So much, the contracts, athletic commissions, everything like that. So then I became a partner and did the research with the athletic commissions, with what you had to do with the contracts, and dealing with promoters, and dealing with the TV networks, and that's how I started with Kevin Kelly, and through the deals we did with Ali, and through the other guys, that's how I kind of got my background and how to structure an endorsement contract. What's fair for the. I always look at it whether it's a fight or whether it's an endorsement deal. Both sides have to get value because my philosophy is you want to work with. I want to work with the fighters long term, so I have to give them value for long term. Same thing with the endorsement. If Chivas is paying you, a lot of money, they want to have the reciprocation of the value to say, yeah, Triple G is a great brand ambassador. So he's someone that we can rely on. We put him in a commercial, and we know the fans or their clientele will respond to him with their product, and that's how we structure the deals. And now he's gotten he's got to the point now where he's really earning quite a bit of money from the endorsement contracts. But at the same time, the sponsors, Tecate also sponsors him, that they perceive to get a lot of value from it. Hublot, Monday after the Danny Jacobs fight, he goes 12 rounds with Danny Jacobs, and Monday morning he's at the Hublot Boutique on Fifth Avenue in New York making an appearance for Hublot, and everyone said, I don't know where the thing came out, like he was all marked up in the fight, and Danny Jacobs, I looked at the press conference afterwards, Danny wore sunglasses, and Gennady, had a couple of scratches, but it was like, I don't know where that whole thing came out, but then 2 days later, at the Hublot, they did a photo shoot, he had his watch, and you couldn't even tell he was in a fight, so, but those are the type of commitments that he does, to give value, to the brands and to the sponsorships.
And that's why the press loves him.
Let me ask
a nice guy.
one final question that has to do with something that has divided boxing fans since this announcement, and we're obviously have to get your opinion. And that's Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. There's so many spectrums of it. I know he's been asking about it even before it was announced. He's asked everybody. I've kind of avoided doing that myself because I would rather ask when it's already official. But there's been so much going on. Like Oscar has his thoughts. He doesn't like it. We have Lou DiBella over here in a completely different spectrum from Oscar, and nobody's really in the middle because everybody either feels like Oscar or like Lou. Watch it, be entertained, or I don't want to watch it. It's a circus act. No, there's never an in between. It's always. Well, what are your thoughts on it? Obviously, considering the fact that it is 2 weeks before, actually 3 weeks before your show. It's going to be in Las Vegas as well. And a lot of people are thinking maybe they did this to take some thunder away from your show and take some buys away as well, because obviously at that point in time people have to decide, do I want to spend $100 or however that price pay-per-view is going to be, your event's going to be priced
$100,
yeah. So people are going to decide what do they want to spend their money on. And again, do you feel, how do you feel about it?
I'm in the middle. All I can do on our side is promote our event to the best of our abilities.
Yeah.
We feel like we have the best fight in the sport of boxing.
Agreed.
Two guys in their prime, two guys willing to put it all on the line, and then I think that's what the fans are going to respond to. At the same time, I don't want to downplay any other event. If they can make a successful event, I mean, certainly Conor McGregor is the biggest UFC star. We have a lot of respect for Conor. I'm a big Conor McGregor fan. Dana White was at the was at the Chavez fight, and he's a big Triple G fan. So I have respect for Dana and what Conor have accomplished in it. And look, you can't take anything away from what Floyd has fought. I know he gets the criticism that, you know, there's some guys that he could have fought where he fought, you know, other guys, you know, that weren't in the prime of their careers or whatever it is. But, you know, still, he's 49-0. He's a defensive genius. I think, though, that, you know, he's proven in a lot of the recent fights that they're not as entertaining as, you know, the build-up for the fight. You know, certainly, you know, the Pacquiao fight comes to mind where a lot of people, you know, broke the record, not only for the gate, but also the pay-per-view sales. And then there was a lot of people who were frustrated afterwards. And it's like, well, you know, what did you expect? Kind of, you know, if you're going to pay $100, you know, Floyd won the fight. There's no question he won the fight, but it wasn't so entertaining. So I don't want to downplay that event, and I think the people that buy it will buy it for, look, you know, when you get Floyd and Conor in the room together, not in the ring, but in the room at the press conference, and they're going at it.
It's going to be amazing.
Marketing geniuses
That's going to be a pretty, that's going to be a pretty entertaining thing. What actually happens in the ring, you know, it'd be interesting to see.
You should charge for the build-up of the fight.
If Conor like gets a flashback and like throws a kick or something.
I'm really hoping that happens, but I know you can't.
I think he would rather get disqualified and win the fight than get outboxed for 12 rounds.
But little muscle memory kicks in.
I've seen Conor. You know, he was here in Venice a couple times. I've seen him train. I got a lot of respect for what he can accomplish. It's just, you know, the odds are so stacked against him. You know, fighting Mayweather, even Mayweather at 40 is, you know, if Floyd would engage and stand with him, you know, okay, maybe Conor could throw one of his punches and land it, but, you know, I mean, Floyd is very defensive, and he prides himself on not getting hit, but also prides himself on making a lot of money and saying, you know, the guy didn't hit me, but he doesn't give him a chance to engage. So, you know, but I don't want to, you know, say anything negative about the event, because, you know, they'll do the best that they can for it, and we'll do the best on our show.
And this is why everybody gets along with him. This is why everybody can work with him. It's perfect. He sees it how it is.
One last question about Canelo and Triple G. He's fought everywhere in the world, Triple G, and you brought him to the Mecca of boxing. He's fought there.
Yeah.
Regardless of where the Canelo-Gennady fight, it is now at the boxing capital of the world in Las Vegas. How does Gennady feel about fighting there? I mean, they always say, as a boxer, you always want to fight at MSG. That's the goal. Now the goal is also to fight in Las Vegas. Now that's going to happen. How does he feel about that? Does he feel like he's come full circle in his career? That, you know, he's fought StubHub, he's fought the theater and the arena, he's fought everywhere else in Europe. But now this is where it's all at as a boxer. How does he feel?
You know, when he breaks new ground, like you said, his dream was always fight at Madison Square Garden. Yeah. Even fighting the theater, just to say he's fighting in Madison Square Garden was huge for him. Then when he headlined the arena, the main arena with the Daniel Beal fight, that was a huge thing for him. You know, our goal was to build him in New York as a ticket seller in the media capital. And we knew he would get the most exposure in New York, and then whatever happened in New York would get broadcast around the world and reported around the world. You know, in Japan, he's on the front covers of their magazines. In Germany, you know, in the UK, you know, when it was reported that his grandfather was born in Korea, and the Korean people realized that they have a connection.
Steve Kim's 8th cousin. He always says.
And then his ratings in Korea spiked, and now he's very popular.
He's an international phenomenon. I mean, he really is.
He is, and then you know, then the plan was, okay, now we sold out Madison Square Garden. Now let's bring him to the West Coast. And that's when the Rubio fight. I mean, that's really the one thing. Not too many things have surprised me in Triple G's career, because I had so high expectations for him, and just realized the combination of his excitement in the ring and marketability outside the ring. I really thought this was really a special guy, you know. And when he sold out StubHub against, you know, Rubio clearly was a very credible fighter and known by the Mexican community, but he wasn't a superstar. So it's not like Rubio's going to sell out the arena. Okay, now here's Triple G. You know, it's like, you know, the Mexican fans came out to see Triple G because they saw him fighting in New York, and they were just waiting for him to come to LA. And that's what really surprised me, that it sold out as quickly as it did. And then we had to put the bleachers in and the standing room tickets in, and that was one of the things that surprised me. But even going to Monte Carlo, like some people say, oh, it's only 900 seats.
Yeah.
But Rihanna plays that venue. When you have Prince Albert and Princess Charlene, sitting in the front row at your seat, when you have royalty coming to your fights. I mean, that's something that is just like a special thing. And then going to the O2 in London, it was kind of part of the overall plan. And at some point, I say, okay, 5 years, we've accomplished so much in 5 years. Now he's in the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. At the same time, if we would have gotten the Sergio Martinez fight, if we would have gotten the Felix Sturm fight, if we would have gotten Chavez Jr. when I was negotiating with Bob,
I remember all that.
that would have, I think, instead of his career being like this, it would have been even more vertical.
Carl Froch, all those fights.
Yeah, the Carl Froch fight. Yeah, that would have. I mean, if he would have gone to UK, that would have sold out Wembley Stadium also.
Oh yeah.
With the Carl Froch fight, but I mean, you can't look back on it would have been great making some of those fights, but at the same time, we're here where we're at right now. It might have taken a little bit longer. Some people look at it as it happened really fast. From our perspective, we would have liked to have it happened a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
But regardless how he's gotten here, now he's in the biggest fight in boxing, and that's what the fans.
You've done a fantastic job on marketability and
it didn't take 6 years, so thank God.
Thank you.
I know.
Sir.
All right, thank you, Tom, for your time. As we stated, Tom Loeffler here with the Fight Guys. Tune in September 9th for the Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez card on HBO. It has Quadras versus Estrada, and we have Inui coming in as well. And that is also the lead up to Canelo versus Triple G at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas on HBO pay-per-view, September 16th. And obviously, keep tuned to Tom Loeffler because he does give you guys backstage access to Triple G when he goes to Big Bear. He'll obviously have news for Klitschko when it comes to the AJ rematch, Anthony Joshua. And just stay tuned to the Fight Guys. We'll keep you updated with everything that's coming up as well. And
Dominic Verdine of RingTV.com and IFL TV.
Cynthia Conti for ringtv.com and my YouTube channel.
And Steven Cardenio, KO Artist Sports on YouTube.
And I'm Fernando Pimentel for the Fight Guys and Behind the Glove and BehindTheGloves.com. Saying we'll see you at the fights.
Tell the fans too, actually, tell them where they could get updated with K2 stuff and like your social media stuff. Do you guys have a lot of that?
Triple G has a big following. It's just Triple G Boxing, GGG Boxing on Instagram, on Twitter. I have my personal Twitter accounts just at Tom Loeffler1 and Instagram, although I'm more active on the Twitter.
I know.
And, people follow me, I think, for the pre-sale codes when the tickets go on sale. That's the most exciting news that I can put out there.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Oh, that was a fun interview.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.